live edition of Critical Line Item. My name's Tom Radlick. Thank you for joining me for this particular video segment. Those of you who've been watching this particular channel in recent days will know that there is a social media ban bill that is currently before Parliament. Now, let me update you on where things are at before I touch on the topic for today's particular commentary. A parliamentary committee has made certain recommendations that it wants met before the Parliament passes the legislation through the Senate. So that will be going on in the next couple of days. So you're going to have this debate that will be very vibrant and very interesting and very agonising for people that have spent time writing submissions to a committee. There's 15,000 of them, by the way. 15,000 submissions within the space of 24 hours, and only 107 at last look that have been put up on the Parliamentary Committee website. So that legislation will go through this week. The coalition has agreed with the government to get it through. The Greens are somewhat unhappy, and there are members of the coalition that will cross the floor. What I'd like to highlight is a couple of problems with the legislative process that have come up in submissions before the Parliamentary Committee. The Parliamentary Committee has received various submissions from expert groups as well as youth advocacy organisations. Let me take you to the submission from the Australian Psychological Society. It's right here. It's 2 pages. That's probably all they had time to properly write within the space of 24 hours as a professional association. Let me read a couple of things from it. The APS, the Australian Psychological Society, is concerned that the time for making a submission, 1 business day, is manifestly inadequate to properly assess and provide input into a matter of such complexity and significance. The development of legislation in relation to age restrictions on social media requires careful consideration of the extensive body of research on child and adolescent development, psychological impact of social media, and broader societal implications. Rushed commentary on such a complex and psychologically nuanced issue risks failing to adequately consider the evidence, potentially leading to unintended consequences for young people and the Australian community. The APS strongly believes that the informed contributions from experts and stakeholders are essential to crafting a regulatory framework that balances safety, authority, access to information and community, and the psychological well-being of people involved. That's the Australian Psychological Society telling the Federal Parliament, telling the Parliamentary Committee that considered this particular bill that they should have done something a little bit different, and that is had a better due process in order to deal with the legislation properly. Consider the evidence, consider the expert opinion in more detail, and also, if they would have been bothered, wait for the results of software testing for age verification. That is still pending, by the way, in case you weren't aware. So the evidence of that, being able to do what the government wants to do, isn't available. So the Parliament has made a decision, at least in the case of this committee, to recommend the legislation, despite the fact that there is no evidence of whether the verification software actually works. Let's turn to a submission from the Youth Affairs Council of Victoria. Now, these are this theme is followed through by other people, by the way, but it's an interesting submission nevertheless. Paragraph 3 of the submission from Youth Affairs Council of Victoria, the abbreviation is YACVIC, YACVIC. It goes like this: by giving the public only 1 day to prepare submissions into this inquiry and holding only 1 public hearing in Canberra, one business day after the closing date for submissions, there has been virtually no opportunity for WIACVIC to consult with the young people and youth sector that we represent to canvass their views on the details of this bill. We are seriously concerned that the unreasonably short time frame of this inquiry means that the committee will miss out on hearing valuable perspectives from young people and youth organisations, most of whom are not aware that this inquiry is happening, let alone have the capacity to produce a submission in a 24-hour time frame. So you've got the psychologists and you've got the Youth Affairs Council of Victoria looking at this matter in a particular light. Now, let's go through a couple of other issues. Young people on social media are not a union that you can assemble views from relatively quickly. They are not a lobby group as the accounting profession can amass through the professional bodies like CPA Australia, the Institute of Public Accountants, CPA and CANS, Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. We saw that triumvirate along with other people in action. In action when Stephen Jones, the Assistant Treasurer, went through an exercise on a code of professional conduct, ethical determination. That was a complete and absolute shambles. It was exposed almost 12 months ago by the minister. It had a closing date in mid to late January, and then it appeared mysteriously on the 2nd of July as a finalised document, and all hell broke loose because there were aspects of that document that were not consulted upon. It took the better part of a year for the government to get that thing sorted because consultation wasn't done properly. Now, a bunch of kids on social media can't command the time, nor do they have the resources nor clout to command the time of a minister, a shadow minister, any number of parliamentarians. They can't organise. They can't fly people in to to Parliament House or to a minister's office. This is where people need to be really, really careful in how they approach the task of legislating the rules that govern what we do on social media and how people grapple with this. It is a process that will have unintended consequences. There are things people won't have thought of because this has gone on too quickly. It reminds me of an ad, just in closing. It reminds me of an ad that used to be on television when I was a young fella. I had less grey hair and not as much weight around my midriff. It was the Transport Accident Commission. And you'd see this from time to time. It would close with 2 words: speed kills. The same is true from the legislative process as it is for those people that speed on the road. You go too quickly, you will make mistakes. And there is no need to go too quickly in this situation. I have spoken previously about my own experience with social media. One of my concerns has been that people like me, who are born with a medical condition that is rare, feel excluded, feel out of sorts, feel isolated from the world because you're not communicating with people who have that condition on a regular basis. It took me 43 years, ladies and gentlemen, to find a cohort with the same disorder, and the weight went off my shoulders. Children under the 16 deserve to have that benefit in an era of social media that I only got 4 decades on, more than 4 decades on after I was first diagnosed. The process is wrong. The outcome may be fair to middling, but guaranteed there's going to be a lot of things people need to do to fix the goddamn thing as it gets edges towards implementation. If you want to watch an interview I did with Tom Connell back in December 2018 on hypoparathyroidism and living with hypoparathyroidism and discovering people 43 years after diagnosis online to share a communal experience, go right ahead. The QR code is up in the corner of the screen. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking with you again.